And this session is now being recorded. All of your chat will be available in the recording afterwards as well. I'm delighted to welcome Steve Deneen, President and Founder from Fuse, looking at this topic around AI and continuous learning success. Steve, lovely to have you here today. I hope you're well.
Definitely. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity
Excellent.
to hopefully what's going to be a super interesting session around blending the human and the AI for continuous learning. So lots of good stuff. Ready to kick off?
Ready when you are, Steve. Brilliant stuff. Thanks very much.
And then do get the questions come through, and I'm sure that Andrew will surface them and we can stop and pause. And I think for those that know me, it's always a good opportunity to get me to calm down because the more excited I get, the faster I talk, and that's no good for anyone. So maybe the first question I always love to ask, right, and see how things are changing, is maybe just pop into the chat yourself. When you think about yourself and your own learning journey, where do you start? So, and this is more particular, I think, to your outside learning environment. So, if you don't know something, you want to develop knowledge, skills, capability, the abilities to do something, where do you go?
Okay, I've opened up a space for people to put this in. There's a space, and rather than use the general chat, if you can put your answers in that main chat that I've just opened up there. So I see Janet's just put YouTube in. If you could put those answers in the general chat. Steve, there's a couple of people saying you're a little bit on the quiet side. I have a very good microphone, which is unfortunately Karen, which is why people can hear me. I have a very big mic. If you're possibly able to speak a little bit louder into your microphone, Steve, if that would be possible for people, they would appreciate it. But we're beginning to get some answers through about your personal lives, and it's really interesting. I was in the session yesterday with a group of people, and I asked them the same question: where do people learn from? And it's interesting to see the responses. Are you surprised by these responses in there, Steve? A lot of people saying Google and YouTube.
If you can let us know if my voice is any better.
Sounds a little bit better to me. It's a little bit louder. That's fabulous. Thank you.
Again, any other thumbs up from the people that are saying it's too faint? It's a tiny
Tiny
bit
bit
better.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe there's actually something in my settings I might want to change, as well as speaking up. So apologies for that. Just trying to see if there's anything in my
We
voice
can
setting.
cope. We can cope. I will turn my
Let
volume
me see if I
down.
can. I'll try and talk
Oh,
louder.
that's better. That's awesome, Steve. That's brilliant.
Maybe
Fabulous.
talking louder will help me talk slower as well. Um, so yeah, what we have so far, I think we've got ChatGPT, which we expected. We've got LinkedIn Learning, a bit more ChatGPT, YouTube, a popular one. I can't actually see anyone that's put Google in here, which is interesting, right? Because I think you go back a year ago, Google probably would have been right at the center, and I think now we're seeing actually, YouTube, ChatGPT as being those two really common places, I think, to come through. And I think we want to hit on that, right? Because I do think that if we want to design learning for those same for you and for the same our audiences, we have to take on board the shifting habits and behaviors of individuals to meet learning where people are. So I think with that in mind, and we think so why do we want to design learning and why do we want to use AI and how do we what's the purpose of all this stuff? I think generally seeing that what we see is in our data is when we start to look at the people who are learning in this YouTube style way, ChatGPT way, and courses, LinkedIn, and so forth, the amalgamation of all those different learning interventions enabled by learning technology, we see that the frequency of learning engagements in these different formats, the people who learn more frequently, who are open minded, that use different formats and mechanisms to do that, develop their capabilities faster, they stay more relevant, and we can connect that frequency of learning directly to an improvement in the KPIs against the people that don't. So we do know there is a great correlation, and we also know that simply measuring courses to an output isn't enough by itself. We need to look at all of those things that you talked back now that we have technologies that can deliver that type of a learning experience. And then a lot of that comes to the really exciting moment that AI brings to us as humans in learning design process. And that's around personalization. One of the barriers I think to learning engagement has been the lack of personalization. And in essence, you can think about it for a long time. Initially, we really only had the face-to-face event. Then we had the e-learning course. And I think a lot of companies are still stuck in those two main modes, that 90% of their learning is still designed as a course, either face-to-face or in a school course. And I think now what we're able to do, with AI especially, is to enable a much more personalized experience, personalized to language, personalized to capabilities, to knowledge, to role, to the moment of need, but in an automated way. So the ability to personalize is what AI allows us to do, because we can output so much more, and personalize it in so much more. And that's what we're gonna talk through and explain how that personalization links to the better learning environment. I often use this as an example, right? Just to explain why I believe personalization is so key. Because whenever you talk about things like learning preferences, you get kind of an automatic reaction sometimes. People say, oh, it doesn't exist, and that research was really bad, and there's no such thing. And just because the research was bad, it doesn't mean there isn't something around personalization and preferences to the individual, to the moment, to the personality. And for me, for those that know me, I'm ADHD through and through. So is my whole family. My wife, my kids, everyone to come to a place and they need a rest after 15 minutes. My house is a place to come to. But that also does create a preference in how I want to learn versus someone whose board I sit on, who's autistic, and she runs a profit organization helping create neurodiverse awareness. So if I look at my preference, let's say if I start a learning journey, if I'm not solving a problem, but if there's a more holistic subject I want to get to grips with, it's going to be my biggest dopamine hit. So if I've got 10 objects on the screen to learn, my logic doesn't really exist. I'm not looking at it to say I should go through in a structure. I'm thinking, what's the most interesting bit, which could be number 4. What's the next most interesting bit, number 7? So I want to go through it, my brain through what's most interesting. My colleague, though, who's my friend who's autistic, she wants structure. So she wants to know where to start, what to do next, and when to finish. And obviously, for those stand-up trainers, obviously it's really hard having us both in a room, thinking how do you design learning in a room. That's going to hit both of us, because I'm going to be asking questions from page 74 and she's going to be wondering why you're answering that question from page 74. So if you look at other parts towards it, I really love multimodal courses. I want video, audio, I want things that's going to maintain my attention. So I need it to be heavily stimulating. Again, my autistic friend, she wants it bullet point to the point and without the fluffiness. I want it from a story perspective. Give me the story, give me the wrapping, give me the engaging storytell approach. Whereas on her side, she's going to want it from simplicity of just give me the facts. So again, I think super interesting once we recognize our brains are different, whether that's neurodiversity, whether that's moment of need, and that the higher degree of personalization we can give, the higher degree of interaction. And shout out Juliet. I saw you on the thing there, Juliet. I know we were passionately talking about the other day. So I'm really, really keen to continue our conversation in this area. So I want to break this down into the 4 C's, right? So when we think about AI and how AI helps, I think it's nice for us to be able to break this into what we call the 4 C's of AI. So how each bucket put together helps us actually develop the story we want to get to. So, and for us, that's how does AI help you on the creation process? How does AI help you on the curation process? How does it help us consume in the different ways we may want to consume and for different needs and different purposes? And then the AI coaching bit, which is really that for us, that task enablement, allowing you to actually apply that learning on the job to accelerate your capability, your behavior, your habit, and allow you to do that thing that you learned to be actually applied in a better way. So if we start with the AI creation piece, right? And if I just go to the next slide briefly, right? I probably want to give me a second here, just a little demo, right? Just to show the capability of this. So, because again, I think there's a lot of stuff out there around AI content creation. So I think what would be really cool is just to show you how far this has now come and how far it's moving and how that changes some things. So I'm just going to share my screen now. And I'm going to hit.
I'm just moving screens about everybody just so that you're able to see what's there.
Okay.
Okay. All right. We have a whiteboard. We don't want the whiteboard. You need to go to the screen option, Steve. Top left corner under share 8.
Screen option.
You got it?
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Okay. So yeah, here we are. So let's go into just showing, for example, how easy it is now. This is something that's now embedded into Fuse as of next month. That allows us to create lessons super quick. And the idea is to get people 80% of the way there. So a skilled learning practitioner would be able to create content quicker, faster, and more personalized for each audience. And as someone who's not an expert, who's maybe a subject matter expert can now begin to get something out there without being an expert on instructional design. So it really opens up that capability to get the knowledge out of the experts' heads into a place where people can start to apply it or start to get to it. So let's go with just my favorite one, which we're going to go with making a mojito, because I think that's a life skill that everybody needs. So we're going to create a quick bit of content. I'm going to go with my writing style. So I, as an ADHD person, I like it a bit engaging storytelling. Specify the audience, so it's frontline staff. And in a Fuse world, this will take it from a Fuse audience and be able to put that inside there. So I can specify objectives, my tone, all that type of wonderful stuff. Normally, you'd use your own content. So we would find the best mojito maker in the company and would create a video for them and capture them making it. So we would really recommend using video to create that knowledge or capture that knowledge and use it as a source material that we then use to create the content with. So lots and lots of options inside here. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, so I just want to get to the example. But this is now going to help me. And I could type in, I want to use Bloom's taxonomy or Gagne Gagne or that type of stuff, and it would understand that piece. And it's now going to start to build out, and it can specify where is going to find the images from the content I give it. It's going to create the images, and you can see here it's now building out my learning objectives, and I can specify for each learning objective the type of interaction that I then want to have with it. So interactive learning scenario, maybe watch a video, maybe do a challenge, that type of stuff. But again, I'm not going to go through that in detail. Just want to show how fast it is to get you to that 80% piece that then allows us to think, okay, well, this easy, I can then start to create maybe different variants of the course for different audiences really easily, whereas historically that would have been really, really tricky to do. So I could create one for frontline staff versus head office staff and all that type of stuff, and use my AI assistant inside here to basically say, actually, I don't like that picture. Change the picture from that to a female bartender in South America. Use a class of this type of class, etc., etc. So inside here now, it's creating the content and a way for it, So the images, the pictures, the text, the interactivity, and in this case, it will create a SCORM course. But the content in the SCORM course, we'll talk about in a second, we can be using that more in the flow type moment as well. So yeah, I don't want to go too much further. And if I now want to say, because I don't know whether my audience prefers to read or write, maybe I've got a dyslexic audience inside there, so I can just tell it to narrate and give it a voice and make it narrate in that preferred voice I want. Again, it may be that I've got staff coming in from different countries, and therefore English may be not their first language. So again, I can go in and I can then specify, and I can then just hit a few buttons inside here and say, go and translate the language for me into all the different languages that I want. So people can learn in their mother tongue rather than in their second tongue. So let me jump back out, and we should be
back to the slides. We've just had a question, Steve. Gabriel has asked what tool app are you using, and I said it's within your LMS tool, is it, or is it a discrete part of your tool?
Sorry, I missed that. I was reading the text. What was the question again?
What tool or app are you using right now to generate that?
Yeah, so this is actually integrated into Fuse.
Excellent.
So, and again, inside Fuse, we always look towards, do we build or do we partner or do we integrate in? So what we just do is create an integrated, seamless system towards it. And today it might be one platform, tomorrow it might be another platform. So we probably switch different AIs and different technologies and tools and fuse them all together. As far as our clients know, they never really get to know what the end product is. Whether we've built it or whether we've integrated it.
Fair enough. Cool. Okay, there's more questions coming through. I'll tell you what, let's carry on and we'll pick the questions up later on. That'd be easier. Excellent stuff. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Keep putting them in. And Kelly, I like your question.
Yeah, and
I'll pick that up. Yeah.
Kelly's point. I think we get to the point, right? So I think what we're showed here, and if we think about learning in a pyramid, right, this is the bottom layer, right? So this allows us to create a knowledge layer, if we like. So we've got the knowledge out of someone's head, and we made it available so someone can watch it, read it, understand it. But obviously that's different to applying it. And I think as you see, as we move up the layer of the pyramid and look at some of the other AI tools, we can see how they help support actually apply that. But obviously something like Mojito, right, you're never really going to have to learn it until you've made a few mojitos. Maybe got feedback on it, maybe from a person, maybe from an AI. The real application or the real learning doesn't come to application. The key thing I think we're trying to do though in the Fuse journey is recognize and say, how much do we train people less upfront and more provide the knowledge really super easy at point of in that YouTube way, ChatGPT style way, because likelihood is you've been onboarded, you've learned 20 different drinks, all the different things you're trying to do. There's no way you can remember all of it.
Yeah.
So the reality is you're probably going to have the video or the question answer, and you want to be able to refresh yourself and actually make it, make it side by side together.
Yeah.
So how do you use the knowledge in application, and how do you use other tools like coaching and so forth to help you, transfer that in an accelerated way from simply understanding into actually a repeatable habit, repeatable skill.
Absolutely. I actually wrote a blog post today. I put a post out on LinkedIn today exactly about that, which was about processing, cognition, and understanding, and just the nature of the relationship between those different levels. So yeah, we're definitely in the right place. Steve, back to you.
Yeah, and so again, if we just look at that first tool, right, and this is just one example of an AI tool, many coming more into the platform. What you see inside here, we're now able to start to personalize that and make it inclusive. We can personalize it to make it to the language. We saw how easy that was. Literally clicks a button, and it even takes on board things like custom dictionaries. Second, it's easy now to take different variances of that for different roles. So a sales role versus, I remember with my first job when I was a techie, and the sales guys used to come into the technical team and think we were talking Klingon or a different language. So, but now to actually easily modify that content to be for the sales audience, for the technical audience, and everyone understands it, obviously great. Same thing is media-wise, we can put video in there, we can put files in there, we can put, so again, if you're dyslexic, you might want to read it, so you might want to listen to it, not to read it. If you're ADHD, maybe the games and stuff are the really kind of like the stuff you really like the most. So again, having the different modes that people choose, I think is key. And what we'll touch on in a second now, I think, is the moment of need and device as well. So, and again, the other reason we love video, I think, as a primary vehicle is because by default, if you make the video of the person making a mojito, you get to watch it. You have the option to watch. You have the option to listen. You have in the Fuse world, you have the option to talk to the experts to say, actually, what's your preferred rum that you use from which manufacturer? Or on the right-hand side, what we'll come to is the AI conversation, which if that knowledge is already there, I can just type in and say, what's the best rum? And if it was mentioned in the video that they love white rum as the perfect mojito for that one, then actually it's going to give us that information. So conversations with the AI, if the knowledge is being fed into the system through the content, or if it hasn't, then let's codify that new stuff by talking to the expert and then feeding that in as well. So again, what I love about that is the automatically creating multiple modes, which isn't just about as a preference from a neurodiversity or a brain side. It might just be the relevance to that moment of need. Sometimes you just need a quick answer. Sometimes you need to see the thing actually working, and sometimes maybe you're happy to read. The translation bit we hit on, again, that's across most things now. So whether that's the course, which press a button, it will give you the different narrations in different languages, the different text, the different quizzes, but likewise also with the videos. So I can click a button in a video, go from English to Spanish, and as our team captured a whole bunch of content, they bottled the greatness of one of our clients, Levy, out a couple of months ago. Literally within half an hour, all that content is then available in Spanish in a personalized way for that organization, which is pretty cool. I think we hit on this bit too, which was just that love of, if we are going to more rapidly create content and use it for different purposes, capturing the best people in an organization, we often find is the best starting point for that source. And it probably why outside of Fuse, I guess I was such a lover to create our Fuse School channel. Our Fuse School channel is 1,000 videos where we've captured the best teachers that we can find to explain maths and science. And we have like 10 million kids a year saying, I now get the concepts that my teachers struggle to explain to me. So that's the concept of bottling greatness. Find the best performers, capture what makes them the best, what makes you best at your job. Why are your KPIs better than everyone else? Use the visualization techniques to enhance and simplify the explanation, as we've done on our YouTube channel, and then utilize that content with AI to help you create the courses, the kind of YouTube style approach to find the video, or that kind of that chat facility as well. So, and again, just hitting that point, that's why I think it's so great to use bite-sized videos, right? Because by default, that one video literally is updated into that AI tool and you've got your course. At the same time, you've got a structured YouTube style approach that I can find that video to watch and say, how do I make a mojito? And it will find that video and you've got that answer. What's great around this is we're using AI to create those 3 different moments of need. So the right-hand side is a problem-solving one. Maybe you could argue the same for the middle. and the left-hand side is that more foundational 10% type stuff. So maybe just to pause and see if there's any other questions so far before we go on to the curation and consumption coaching pieces.
So we had a question from Tess earlier on about the citation for the engagement from personalised learning. So we'll need to dig that one out. We've had the question from Gabriel about specific plugins name, but I think you've answered that because you said that you use different tools depending on what the specifics are. And we had a question from Adam. It's literally just come through. Might come through later, but how can you use AI to measure the impact of the content being generated after it's been consumed? So there's definitely something to do with the evaluation piece that sits out the back end of that as to what that looks like. I'm seeing that a lot from evaluation and what that looks like.
Yeah, and again, I think again, all the first thing we're showing there, right, is creating courses faster. We're not necessarily shown yet a seismic change. All we're really solving in that AI courses problem, I think, is solving the bottleneck that learning professionals can't create the content at the speed of the business. So it's a tool that allows a great learning professional to basically be able to be more reactive to the business and to have something that doesn't get 100% the way there. It's your tool. That's your Jarvis. It's your Iron Man, and this is your Jarvis. This is helping you get there quicker and to create something faster and better than you were before. I don't think there's any tool that's out there that's going to look into 100% replace that instructional design part, right? I believe this is a tool to help the experts be better.
I think that's a really interesting point, Steve. It's the Henry Ford faster horses. He said if people, you said what do they need? They didn't want a car, they wanted faster horses. And it feels like we're at that stage at the moment right now. There's a lot of faster horses being produced, but no one's actually worked out what the car's going to look like in the future.
We can show you the car.
I knew you were going to do that. Sorry. Apologies for that, everybody.
So again, I think from another part of curation, personalization. Again, if I want to share my screen, so let me. Thanks for that. And then if I go back to screen sharing, and let me share that, and let me just go to. Here we go. So I just wanted to just on the UX and the personalization side, right? So again, when we think of UX, and we do hear a lot around UX being the number one reason people want to move learning platforms and LMSs specifically. So when we think of UX and personalization, we think of it in three buckets. Your navigation, the left-hand bar here. So how you get around how do you get to and how do you find stuff and get back to stuff. Search, which is to your points, the ChatGPT Google style approach, and then the whole personalization of the page here, so you know what to do, or you find the stuff that's interesting and working your way through. So if I take the left hand side, right, the left hand side for us is using familiar navigation that things like history. If you've used YouTube, you use Netflix, you use Spotify, it feels familiar. So the ability to have something where you don't have to train your learners because it's natural and it's easy, and you're using this type of interface on a day-to-day basis towards that. So for us, that is the familiarity, if you like, that goes through there. I think the second piece we hit on is that the ability to quickly find content. And that content could be in two different ways. It could be I'm looking for content, so I'm looking for what's Steve Jobs' vision. And I can see here it's finding the videos in that YouTube style way they want, or potentially, it's finding the answer that's inside the content. So in this Skype here, because we've uploaded the Mojito, the Mojito content, this is, to your point, this is starting to get to the rocket ship and the car, right? This is using all of the content that's in the courses and in the videos and in the files and so forth to provide that technique we've really got in the last year or two, that ChatGPT style way that says, I'm now able to get to the answer. I'm now able to create 70-20 style frameworks of learning or 5DIs without having to actually create the content 3-4 times. So literally by putting the course into Fuse or the videos, we're automatically creating that performance support materials and allowing us to move beyond faster courses into saying, well, we don't need to train everything because actually the best knowledge is at point of need, either in a text-based format, or I can jump and watch the video, or I can chat to the expert inside here. So a first step towards that, which is then basically reusing all of that knowledge we have in our content into an AI model that allows us to interact with it in a variety of different ways. And then it's hitting on that piece in the middle. So that's the search piece, which is AI search, just a really smart search and saying, it doesn't matter where your content is, what platform, if it's a LinkedIn or a Udemy or it's a Fuse, or even if you've got another LMS we connect into, you're providing that ability to get back to it, to find it through that search part, and then discover and personalize this experience. So this homepage here, it's the homepage and it's the aggregation of all your different learning experiences. So I might have been a member of a learning experience, that's the Leadership Academy. That's mapping out all the content, the AI coaching capability, micro learning. So again, if we look at this one, it's probably not a bad one to show, right? At the bottom here, you might have that 10% layer. That's my formal layer of courses aggregated from different places that helps me with leadership. My next layer up is that social layer. So bite-sized content from experts across the business, social conversations that are going on. So that's my 20%, my social layer. And then things like my AI coach is where I've now got my my task, my 70% base layer, as well as the other piece on there. And we'll come back to that in a second. But I just wanted to hit, you've got this concept of academies or communities, excellent hubs, whatever you want to call it. And then your front page is basically your aggregation of all of that. It's trying to surface and understand you and trying to make it easy to get back to stuff and easy to surface stuff that it thinks is interesting that you might want to go back to, click on, as you do on a YouTube. When you go to the front page of YouTube, it used to be 5-7 years ago, you go to YouTube to search for something. These days, most of YouTube content, more of of content is consumed by surfacing interesting stuff to you that's relevant for you on the home page. So we want to make sure you're hitting all those learning points, whether that's I'm just trying to search, whether that's I'm trying to get back or find something, or whether that I just want to be inspired or continue based upon the role I've got and the journey I'm on. So we jump back again into here and back into the slides.
Right.
And just think, guys,
just going to say, Steve, there's a
good size,
great question from Catherine, which I would love people in the chat to think about, is those people who work as trainers and learning designers not worried their skills will be diminished? I think it's a really interesting question that we need to think about. Maybe not for to you to answer here, Steve, but people in the chat, please do respond and tell me what you think. How are you feeling about what this might mean to the nature of the job that you do? Because this is going to change what we do, I think. It's definitely going to change what we do.
Yeah, and I think to hit that point, Andrew, I think I view this as a tremendously exciting opportunity.
Same.
I think this gives us the Iron Man and Jarvis type opportunity, right, to do better, quicker, faster. But it does mean there is an evolution of the roles. I don't think any of our roles in any company, right? I don't think it's very hard to find a role that's not going to be improved or enhanced with AI as an assistant. Yeah. So if I view as someone that to create strategy, then AI is a great tool for me to help me create strategy. I think for an instructional designer, learning designer, and I think as we continue this presentation, the ability, if you're just creating a traditional SCORM course by itself and there's an unwillingness to change, then I think it's very uncomfortable. I think if you view this as I can now deliver far more impactful experiences, I can deliver performance support automatically, I can deliver the bite-sized content, I can deliver more personalized content courses for people, I can curate different experiences with different things towards it. But part of my role is probably feeding the brain and feeding the corporate brain. So there is an evolution of it. And AI is only as smart as the content inside there, so we still have to feed it. So there are new skills, new roles, new capabilities. The person who interviews the expert to create out the brilliant stuff through, it's a new skill. The person that keeps the AI up to date with it is a new skill. The person that creates and configures the AI coach to be a really great person towards it is a new skill. So I absolutely see the role of L&D practitioners evolving rapidly, really rapidly, to take on board these new tools. It's exactly the same as it was when we went from classroom training to e-learning. that, there was definitely a jump where some people jumped and they loved it and they became using both of these tools together, and others obviously didn't make that jump and chose different
I
careers.
remember when we went from overhead projectors to PowerPoint, and it was like, wow, we all had to learn how to use PowerPoint, and it did. It just became part of what we did. But it's a very different, interesting shift. Brilliant, Steve. But again, lovely the conversation, everybody. Please continue. I'm loving the questions that you're putting in and answering each other's questions as well. Steve, back to you.
Yeah, and I think to the point on that page that we showed, right, the page that's on the PowerPoint slide now, that whole page is automatically generated by role. So it's the content isn't manually put on the screen. Behind the scenes, it understands the job, it understands the role, it might understand the organizational skills that you want to get to, and the content is being surfaced dynamically to you based upon your individual part towards it. And that's what I showed in that previous screen on that Academy piece, for example, where the content is aggregated automatically and dynamically changing. So our system would be looking at things like the tagging all the content with AI skills, and then potentially then surfacing and feeding that based upon feeds you do. So we collate a lot of metadata that allows us then to personalize the feeds that are coming through for an individual inside of here. Oh, actually, it's a good question about training data, right? So I'm sure there've been educational experts who are involved in training data for the AI applications capable design and learning. I think, again, when we think of data and learning points, for example, we capture 350 different data points in Fuse. And that data obviously is used for a whole variety of things, to both personalize experiences, but also to correlate to business KPIs to show what's working and therefore what we should do more of. I love the point. I think there's a point there from James saying we can evolve, but to be the human filter and to enable AI to manage effectively and accurately. Technology has always enabled augmented humans. I think that's the point, right? It's like we are going from a horse and cart to a car, and we just all need to learn how to drive the car to effect, right? For those that don't want to learn a car, right, I'm sure there's going to still be a few horse and carts around, right? But for those that are driving a car that have an open mind, hopefully are really excited about the possibilities of where a car can get you. Okay, so let's jump in, continue on the curation part around skills. And I do think there's a really interesting bit around skills, right? I think skills for a number of years were thought, and actually if I jump to where they started and where I think isn't the place to start, right? I think when skills technology came to market, right, it all focused around this concept, which again, Fuse is releasing, but I think isn't the first place to start, to be fair. This is where you potentially have, you tag all of your content against 10,000 skills, and then each individual is having a skills gap, a personalized skills gap. And these are my 5 skills, and this is the 5 courses that map to that. So in essence, a very broad number of skills against a very shallow level of knowledge. That's the first generation, I think, of AI skills. And I think the challenge with that is it's been really hard for organizations to prove the value of investing inside that. And I think what we're seeing is a shift back, right, towards core skills and organization skills. So rather than trying to measure, if I've helped 10,000 people close one skill gap, how do you validate the value of that? It's hard, right? What's much easier, which is why I think there's a shift, is saying, what are the 5 to 20 organizational skills, core skills that drive a business forward? That could be, and it is in many companies, the use of AI. It could be talent development, leadership management. And if we develop and then we help people evolve those skills, we believe that's what's going to drive the business forward. And that's going to be slightly different for each business, depending on the projection of the future. And that's where we use that kind of deep academy model to then start to have a deeper set of features, of learning features against each of those skills. So instead of just it being, a macro skill is mapped to a shallow course, what we're now seeing is us develop skills academies or knowledge or excellence hubs, if we like, that use social learning, use AI coaching, that have the courses part, micro learning, that allow an ongoing journey to develop a fewer set of skills that if the whole organization gets better at, it drives the business forward. So yeah, just wanted to land on that, because the challenge of whether you start there or you start on the micro skills really impacts the level of personalization. And this is where, not going to go through it now, but where we use Fuse to create some of that personalization and how you design the widgets that are configurable to create that level of personalization around each feed that the individual gets or the role or the group gets. And I think a great case study for us we saw presented at Learning Technologies was from Cancer Research. And they went from a really broad number of skills and focused on 5 core skills that they believed were the core skills that helped the organization and their mission purpose. Not only did they see better data, but they also see what you see here, 150% to 200% increase on the 2 years since they adopted that, and actually moving to that narrow and deep skills versus that kind of shallow and broad skill approach. Okay. This is just showing again other things where we can continue to create personalization. And again, this is again to that role on the learning professionals. That is where I do see the with the ability to have so many more tools available, powered by AI, that the ability to go from this black and white world where we were only able to deliver courses and relatively generic courses for a large audience, and therefore that lack of personalization. I mean, big companies used to go on 5-day courses where only half a day of it was relevant for their particular role. Obviously, if we can, the more and more we can personalize, make it relevant, the more efficient it is, and the more people are going to be engaged in that learning intervention. So what I do see AI allowing us to do is to create a much wider portfolio of interactions. So we're still going to have our courses, still going to have our face-to-face, still going to have e-learning courses, but also more social, more AI coaching, more AI answers, more performance support, more bite-sized learning, more variants of these different content towards it, so that the artist, the learning professional, becomes a true artist, having a much wider palette of tools available. And that's why I think it is tremendously exciting that you get to design and to color and create that experience versus being more limited, both in what you design and the impact of what that does because of the lack of personalization. So then we go into the next I, which is the next C, which is consumption. So the consumption bit is, again, recognizing, and if we use a framework like 5 Moments of Need from Bob Mosher, from his side, if you look at it, there is recognition that the course really only does that new stuff, right? The course is really good at providing foundational knowledge, but it's not great at actually helping me problem solve. And if you think about most of the learning that you guys said earlier on, you're using tools like YouTube and ChatGPT probably more every day to problem solve. The problem solving learning tools are probably used 10 times more in a year than those course tools are. So again, when we think about AI, how does AI now finally allow us to design learning that hits more moments of need without having to create content for the course and for the problem solving bit and for the change bit? So I think this is a really, really exciting moment. I think it's why Charles Jennings actually is super excited by AI, because what he sees is that 70% piece, which has been the tough bit to get to, the problem solving bit, the applying it bit, because you had to create specific content for specific tools in the past to get to that apply bit. Now you can create your course, create your videos, create your micro learning, and it all feeds the brain to allow people to actually talk and solve that problem in the moment of need. And this is, I think, back to the point where we are now finally, using technology to allow us to have a much richer learning experience. And if we give all 5 moments of need, or we create more of those moments of need, then what we see is greater engagement and a correlation of that greater engagement with people accelerating to the performance that likes of Bob Mosher and Charles Jennings and models like 5DI have talked about for a long, long time, but maybe haven't provided the tools that could do that until now. So yeah, and I don't go through too much, but this is then the application of those different tools to do that part towards it, and how when we looked at the consumption bit, saying a course is great, but you probably don't want a course when you want to update someone with a new bit of knowledge. That's probably going to be a small article or a small video. And when I'm problem solving, a lot of the time, I either visually want to see super quick. If I'm problem solving, I want the correct information in the shortest period of time from a trusted resource. Historically, you probably still look at most companies and say most of learning is still happening from the person next to them or an external tool like ChatGPT or Google, because it's not available inside the organization today. And I think that's the big opportunity that as learning professionals we get to change. So I'm not going to touch on that. I think we touched on that already. Again, just hitting the point on, because one point we did touch on was we're creating this content to be consumed in different modes, but also recognition that our audience are in different places. So you could have a customer this morning we're talking to who's got a big head office and it's got a big retail offering. The retail offering is probably going to be on people's personal mobile phones or company mobile phones. The people in head office is probably going to be inside MS Teams on a desktop, or potentially inside a browser, inside Salesforce with the click a button, and it gives them the learning to support them in the moment of need. So again, I think just really hitting that point that when we think about personalization, we're thinking about where our audiences are, the devices they're on, the applications they're on. An open native app is probably absolutely relevant for a frontline staff, much less relevant for head office that's mainly using a desktop, day in, day out. And yeah, just laboring that point a little bit more about creating the content once to fit multiple moments of need: the course, the asset, or the answers bit. Yeah, and I think, Gabriel, absolutely. I think the whole thing that we're pushing, right, is that push-pull piece, right? And using AI to accelerate the pull bit at last. I think if I look at our client base, we've got great clients that have done the push-pull bit, but it was hard to get there for them, right? They had to repurpose all their content and do so much work to rethink all of learning to get to a really great push-pull part towards it. I think my passion here, right, is the belief inside that, but the belief that AI is now the tool to allow us to get there quicker and faster. Yeah, and I do agree, Gabriel. It is, I think if you speak to like Charles Jennings or Bob Mosher, how they can think they've been on this for 20, 30 years, right? And still, to your point, 90% of practice out there is still push. I do think, though, it's because it's hard, right? It was hard. And I think that's what these technologies change. They make it so much easier. Out of the box, we're able to get a push-based solution that we weren't able to before. And for example, that's why the AI finding the answer, taking the content from the course, taking the content from the videos we showed, highlighting who the expert is if I want a conversation with them or I want to do that type of stuff towards it. I think that's why this is truly exciting, that we are automating the 70% and not saying you've got to do that all over again. I think before today, you've had to build the 10% in one way, rebuild the 20%, and rebuild definitely for the 70%. And then you have to think about personalization for the role. That's a lot of work. And I think that's why this is super interesting. Okay, so pushing on. So yeah, maybe the last bit of the C, so it's the coaching bit. And I do think we do know obviously that coaching, human coaching, when done on a program such as onboarding or a new product selling or a sales methodology or call centers, you can see the difference that performance coaching has on the increasing acceleration of a KPI. And it's great, right? Issue is with coaching, though, is obviously the time, the cost to do that at scale the whole time. And I think that's why we're going to see more and more. And for us, we see AI coaching being an absolute core tool to democratize some of that coaching, not to replace a human coach, but to be additive towards it and to be able to do coaching, feedback, reflection, and not just a coaching bit, but actually the big bit I think we're really excited about, which is the evolution of that helping you with that task. So whatever task I'm trying to do, the system already has developed in towards it a number of coaches, a number of task-based coaches that help me do my coach better. And I think this is still part of the learning design. I think if you go back and look at performance design, this is now what we can do. We can design those AI task coaches to help us with individual coaches inside the program. So we're not just designing courses, we're helping really to design that performance increase that learning really should be about. And not to get into too much detail about this, and we've only got 10 minutes left. So for us, the coaches are surfaced in a number of ways, right? So maybe actually to explain the coach first. So a coach, I think I got this in here. I think I did. Yeah, okay, maybe go back to here, right? So a coach in essence is probably two things in our world, right? It's a definition of a personality on the left-hand side. So a sales coach, or it could be more specific to an email coach or something of that nature. Or an onboarding coach. So you've got a coach with a personality that could be, I'm an expert in talent development, I'm an expert in sales, I've got a body of knowledge from the best people in the company, and you're basically saying, here's 3 or 4 areas that you're an expert in. So left-hand side, you're defining a coach, and right-hand side, you're then you're telling it what to be an expert inside. The smaller the expert knowledge, the better the coach is going to be. General coaches are tricky because they've got so many things to give an opinion on. Coaches that are more specific are much better, which is why I think what we'll see inside learning design is AI coaches become a part of that palette of design when we're thinking about learning programs and designing just with prompts, not with programming language, but just designing those coaches to be part of that learning experience. So we're starting to roll this out inside our clients, and learning with our clients about how to get the most from that. But I think look forward a year, this will be standard, I think, in terms of what we're doing inside our industry. In terms of how the coaches come through, they'll come through both as you can see on the left-hand side of our bar, something that you go to and you can click on and say, I want to get to my sales coach, my management coach, my HR coach, my therapeutic coach, whatever I want to be. And I'm talking to that and I'm running it through my scenario and my environment. I mean, one I was, for me, is as a practical example, right? As an ADHD person, if I've got to manage someone who's autistic, we're at opposite ends of the spectrum. We're not in the middle, we're at the opposite ends. So naturally we're gonna not understand each other. So be able to talk to a coach that is a leadership coach that understands neurodiversity, for me to type in and say, how do I run a one-to-one and really kind of like hear each other and understand why we're not understanding each other? And the coach would say to me, yeah, you tend to talk in big pictures, big picture goals. The autistic person wants micro level detail in terms of what to go do. And it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. Okay, so now either I can get someone else to manage that person who's better than me, more empathetic on that part, or I modify my behavior and I recognize I've got to be more specific on the tasks, not my natural language part to that. And that's just a real practical tip that kind of an AI coach is using day to day. The other place obviously we can do is we can embed coaches into our browser extension. We can embed it into MS Teams. We can embed it into the academies. So we do see that these coaches becoming the main interface, I think, looking forward, that people can interact with to surface a lot of that in the moment learning. And this is, I'm not going to jump through, this is where we configure the personality of the coach. And it's just a new skill. Just as instructional design became a skill 20 years ago, this just becomes another skill. To talk about that, the evolution of the L&D professional. And it's not programming. It's the great thing about AI is you're talking to it, right? So it's the more expertise you have in the area. So if I'm a great instructional designer, I'm going to create a better course because I'm able to talk in a language of Gagne and Bloom's and taxonomies and so forth that someone else isn't. So maybe hitting to that part, the use of coaches as part of that framework of learning design to really focus in on that 70-20-10, start piece. And this is just showing it, how the coach, for example, on the bottom right here is integrated into an academy. So it could be you're in the learning journey and actually it's embedded inside there where you can talk and chat to it any one time. So again, just showing the fact that we see the coaches appearing, that task-based support, if you like, that I'm lost in my job. I want to solve a problem. Could be a people problem. It could be I'm trying to fix something, technically, or I just want to have a conversation to help me think through something. And yeah, maybe just getting to a close, right? So what we've talked about so far is personalization, what it pretty much exists today. So everything we show today is pretty much now being either in our clients or being rolled out to our clients, in the weeks to come. And what we have shown, I think, is experiences inside Fuse, which you can personalize, and it brings in the AI courses, the AI curation, the AI consumption, the AI coaches towards that. But at the same time, and I think actually, Juliet, this is where I got excited about my conversation with you, right? If I think about what I do with my kids still, it's a manual process, right? So with my 13-year-old kid, I create the courses for him, right? So if he's going through a science exam, which he is now, I type into the course. My kid is 13 years old, speaks in English, studying at the AQA exam, loves games, loves Japanese anime, ADHD. So create a course and I upload the homework. It scans the homework, understands the homework, and it creates a lesson for me, personalized to the information that I manually give towards it. And then from a coach, I do exactly the same for the coach. I create the knowledge for the coach saying, this is my kid, this is the personality, this is the uniqueness of the individual, of my kid, of this particular kid of 3. And therefore the coach part towards it is going to interact with him. What that creates is something which is more engaging for him, more personalized to him, and he's more likely to learn in that format versus when he goes to school, he's probably, like me, kicked out of most classrooms because he's more interested in talking to people around him than listening. He's more distracted by whatever most interesting thing in the room. In here, we can create something that's personalized and the most personalized, relevant thing to him. So when I think about the future of where we're going, the next step, it is about how do we automate that and to allow the automation of that personalization. So providing this last gap mile towards that. So maybe that's a bit of a pause, I think, for me. I think we go back to why I'm excited, I think, about AI. And it is for those lovers of learning that believe that learning ultimately is about driving somebody's capability to be the best version of themselves, to learn from others, to trial and practice. It's about creating that environment, right? Or creating this environment where you're reducing the friction for them to learn by making it more personalized to the individual, to the moment, to the language, to all those things that go on towards it. And I believe the more we do that, the more engagement we create, and the more we're able to show how that engagement accelerates people to the performance goals you want to get to and maintains the levels above them. So I think with that in mind, and maybe we'll just come out of the slides and maybe just come out to maybe pause the slides and see if there's any questions or conversations that we want to get to.
There are loads of questions and conversation and stuff that's been going on while you've been speaking. There's conversations going on about the data and Laura Bates. So I put a link into the chat, and there's a link to a podcast and so on as well. Your details are available in there as well, Steve. So people, if you want the slides, you can go to the book a demo. You can do that on the screen using the link there now. You can't possibly see the text that's on there, but he's got Steve's email address, it's got Steve's LinkedIn profile, and you can connect with him directly around that. I do want to pick up some of the questions because the conversation has really been going on. There's a brilliant question from Kelly, which was asked earlier on with sorry, I beg your pardon. It was Tracy's question I wanted to go to, which was talking about Laura Bates, which is this: how can we be sure about the AI algorithms and biases being included within there? So this is a test I regularly do on pretty much all the systems. I ask it to name 10 philosophers and see how many come back who are 10 white male. Which is really interesting. And they're beginning to change. You get the odd Confucius comes up as a response now, and you get the odd female response come up. But is there anything that you think we need to do, Steve, around those biases?
I think yes, right. So actually, in the two different bits, actually in the wizard or the template we showed, you can go inside there and actually configure some of that bias. However, what we showed today isn't about using public LLMs. Right, and that's where the bias and hallucination comes in. The challenge here is our focus is much more about internal knowledge, internal capability. Right, so it's not going to in our world. This is about codifying the knowledge of an organization, and therefore, if you ask it for 10 philosophers, we wouldn't give an answer. Right, it would say, I don't know who the 10 philosophers are, unless the organization there is content where people have gone in and actually had documents or videos or learning courses about those 10 philosophers. So we're less interested. We're not trying to compete with ChatGPT publicly, right? That would be quite insane. We don't have $1 trillion, right? But we are using similar, Amazon's MLMs and everyone else towards that. So I think more the challenge, right, is how does an organization make its knowledge accurate? And that's a challenge, right? Because you could launch a product 6 months ago. That's the latest version of it, version 3.2. And then actually last night, maybe 3.21 comes out, that content's out of date. So it's not so much about, in this type of AI, in this type of use case we're talking about, which is training, developing people on the things that need to make them good within an organization, plus some generic courses coming down. Therefore, the challenge is, how do we make sure it's relevant, that the AI is indexing the right bits of content, and lots of things we have infused to make sure what it does index and what it doesn't index. So you wouldn't want it indexing, for example, social learning stuff or opinion-based stuff, but you would want it. So we have a place where you can say this is indexed, that's not indexed. But even that's why there is a really important human piece, right? There is a really human piece that says we got to make sure as learning professionals we're working with the business to make sure that the content that's in the system is relevant, up to date, because if it's not, it's going to give an incorrect answer.
Awesome stuff. Okay, so that really helps because that answers a couple of the other questions as well. I'm going to go to a question from Karen, which I think is so you had the talk to the human expert. And you were mentioning talking to a human expert. Is that live, pre-recorded? Is it chat? What's how would you build that approach in? Is it just something that sits outside? What's the talk to the human expert element?
Two, 3 different things. So when I talked about human experts, there are we still obviously see huge value, right? And this whole thing for us to work out between us is where does a human, where does the AI fit in, and how do you complement each other and maximize the value of both? There's obviously inside Fuse, for example, we have a thing called observations and one-to-ones, which is there's a checklist which somebody would observe somebody's behavior. Could be someone that's in retail, frontline staff. You're observing their behavior, what good looks like. Did they listen? Did they do discovery? Did they product match? Blah, blah, blah. And then you have a conversation with them afterwards, right? So that, we can see anyone that does that type of performance coaching is going to get a massive difference in improvement towards it. There's another part, which is the AI coaching that says, let's collate what great looks like. So you could potentially put a video inside there and say, have a look at that video because we can't do this for everyone. Look at my behavior and see how I did against what good looks like. I think that's something that's we see acceleration of stuff going to come through. And then there's the how do you know who the expert is? Because I've asked a question, the AI's answered it, but also identified if you want to have a conversation with someone, here's the 2 or 3 people that the AI is citing as experts, and therefore makes sense for you to, if you want to have a human conversation, or if it is that expert mojito maker, if you click on the content, you're into that YouTube style conversation in an open forum with the expert as well. So I think there's a multitude of ways. And don't forget, all the AI is, it's a collective intelligence of the experts. I mean, it's not public ChatGPT, right, or public web. The AI we're talking about here is saying, let's go find the experts and make them easy to access so that those experts aren't being asked the same question over and over every day. Let's make sure they're asked the exceptional questions and we're increasing efficiency and maximizing their time.
Which actually, but we haven't got time. There's questions about social and so on. There's questions about which I saw. Where was it gone? It will come back to me. Learning being solitary, says so now. And so there's so many questions we go into. We haven't got time to cover them. There was a question to do with citation, Steve, which if you could pick up directly with Tess. But I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to everybody for your conversation. Awesome conversation going on in the chat. Awesome questions and Q&A going on as well. You've got Steve's details there to connect with him. You've got my LinkedIn profile if you want to connect as well. Like I said, this has been recorded and it will be available to look. It says from Monday, but it should be tomorrow with luck. And do please keep an eye open because we're back in a couple of weeks' time. We're still sorting out and working out who our guests are going to be. But thank you, everybody. I really do appreciate your time today. Appreciate you being with us. And have a good day, what's left of it, the rest of it. I'm just going to put you all into the lobby now, and that's going to stop the recording. So thank you to everybody. Steve, you want to hang on? I'll just have a quick chat with you after. Let's put everybody on hold. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Take care now.
Cheers, guys.